Welcome to the Data Science Lab, everybody. I'm Libby. I run community here at Posit, and I'm joined by Isabella Velasquez. Isabella, would you like to say hello?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
So, what I will do now is introduce our featured lab manager for today, Sara Altman. Sara, would you like to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you will be talking about today?
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Sarah. So I'm a senior developer advocate on the AI team here at Posit. Um, Thanks, Libby and Isabella, for hosting this. So today we're going to walk through data analysis with AI assistants. So if you've seen like the AI stuff that Posit makes before, you might know like we have packages that let you build stuff with that like uses LLMs, and then we have tools that are built with LLMs that help you like do data analysis or data science tasks. So I'm going to focus on the second. So it's less like the packages like Elmer or Chatlass or whatever you might have used, and more on tools where there is an LLM embedded in the tool, and then we're using that to do data analysis. So I'm going to show you a couple tools, or like 3 to 4. We'll see how much we get through. But I also would like to talk about like why you might want to use AI for data analysis or data science, but also why you might not want to, and what kind of tasks it might be useful to use it for, and what kind of tasks it's more risky or you might will not want to use AI for. So please, yeah, ask questions. It'd be great to talk about that. And I'll explicitly talk about a couple pitfalls and how you might avoid them. Um, but yeah, let's
Perfect.
ask
Yes, this is
questions.
definitely the place to be an observer, like a informed skeptic, right? And like ask all the good questions because Sara and Simon are asking them and they're like actively writing blog posts, putting them in the AI newsletter. And that is a fantastic resource for anybody who is curious about use cases of AI and pitfalls and do's and don'ts. I'd also love to just let Simon introduce himself really quickly because he is here. I wasn't sure if he was going to be here. Simon's also on the AI team with Sara. He's our little special guest today.
Yeah, happy to be here. I work on the AI team with Sarah. Sarah and I work together quite a bit, especially on the AI newsletter, which we send out every 2 weeks, as well as various deep dives into problems that we see while we work on data science agents that we are building on the AI team.
Wonderful. Glad you're here, Simon. All right, Sarah, I will let you take it away and share your screen, and maybe get us started with a little bit of an intro on the first tool we're going to talk about today or the first method.
Great. Okay. Let me see. Okay, can you all see that? This is just the
Yes.
Positron website. Because we're going to start by talking about how to install these things. So the first couple tools I'm going to talk about are the two AI assistants that are within Positron. So if you haven't used Positron, it's Posit's like next generation data science ID. You can do both R and Python in it. And these are both assistants that are available in Positron. I'll also show you a tool that you can use in RStudio, and then like a more general thing at the end. But we're going to start with Positron. Before we talk about how to get started, just want to say like a couple things, a couple central ideas they want to get across. The first is like if you haven't used these tools and don't know how to get started, I'm hopeful that this can help you just get started playing around with them. And the second is that I want to emphasize that like AI usage for data analysis or data science really isn't an all or nothing thing. Um, you don't have to suddenly convert to doing absolutely everything with AI assistant and never looking at your code again and like never knowing what's going on with the data again. You could do that. You probably don't want to, but like there's a wide variety of things that you can do, and you can pick and choose what kind of tasks you want to use, but also pick and choose what kind of tools are most useful for you. Um, and so, like, if you are sort of approaching this skeptically because you don't want to lose control over your work, or you're really wary of the risks, just want to emphasize that like you can do a little bit of AI assistance or use it for only some tasks, something like that. It's really not an all or nothing thing. Okay, so the two tools that are in Positron are Positron Assistant, so this one, and then Databot. And so both of them you have to enable. So I'm just going to go over the instructions here, and then I'll show you in Positron really quickly. But the first thing is that you have to enable. Okay, so let me back up. You want to set up Positron Assistant first, and then Databot. So to enable Positron Assistant, there's a setting that you enable, and then you will add a language model provider. I know people often have questions about like which models you can use, so I can go over this, or feel free to ask specific questions in a second. And then you're basically ready to go. So let me see. Let me talk about Databot again or first before we go over to Positron, so I don't have to keep switching the windows. The same kind of thing for Databot. It is a thing that you need to enable. You also do need to install the Databot extension. And hopefully like we can provide this link somewhere so you can follow along, but I just wanted to show you where this documentation is. So for Databot, you need to install the extension, and then the same thing like with Positron Assistant, there's a setting that you need to enable, and then you're basically ready to go. So importantly, like you do need some kind of access to some LLM, and if you're going to use Databot, you specifically need access to a Claude model. And this could either be through an API key that you have or your organization has provided you with, or because you have like some kind of enterprise or you have AWS Bedrock access, which is how Posit does it. And so that's what you're going to see on my screen. But you can also use a key if you have a key available. Okay.
Sarah, would you mind real quick just briefly explaining the differences between Positron Assistant and Databot?
Yeah. So Positron Assistant is a general coding agent, and I'm going to show you both these tools, and we can talk a lot more about this, but at a high level, Positron Assistant is like a general purpose coding assistant. You might use it for debugging, you might use it to write a bit of code for you. Like you would use it in the sort of a general way that if you want help with code. Databot is much more specific. It's specifically for exploratory data analysis. So you'll see this in a bit, but like that is the main thing that Databot in Positron does. It is geared almost entirely towards exploratory data analysis.
Thank you.
I wanted to also hop in and say, whenever you see Sarah hovering over the links that have a little gear icon next to them, for example, in the step 1, enable Positron Assistant, that's actually a link directly to the settings in Positron. So when you click that, your browser is going to say, do you want to open Positron? And you're going to say yes. And then it's going to take you directly to the correct setting that you need to enable inside of Positron. So having Positron open first is a good idea, and using those links is going to be really, really helpful, especially if you've never, say, modified settings.json in Positron before.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I was just about to click on that. So I did click on it, and you didn't see Positron open just because I don't have it in the share window, but it now opens this settings file. And then I already have it enabled, but you would then check this enable option to enable Positron Assistant. Okay. And then we said that the next step is to set up your model provider. So this is how you get access to the LLM. In Positron, everything that you can pretty much do like for like settings for the IDE or like things that you're setting up, you can access from the command palette. So it's Command Shift. Yes, I think that was me.
It's okay, we fixed it.
Maybe Command Shift P stops the recording.
It might be
in Zoom. Okay.
Zoom.
Sorry about that. It also opens the command palette in Positron. So, and then I have this open because I did this recently, but if you search for Positron Assistant or configure language model providers, this will come up. And then you're going to choose your option, which is usually another option. But for right now, like it's giving me the option to either add an Anthropic API key or sign in with Amazon Bedrock. So this is Posit hosts all its models through Bedrock, which is why I've signed in here. But you can also provide it with a key. Simon, shouldn't also the OpenAI compatible endpoint icon be over here? It was
That's a
over
good
here the other,
question.
like yesterday when I did
I
this.
wonder if it depends on some sort of experimental setting. I can poke around and
Um,
send a note.
I know that I had to change my Positron Assistant enabled providers setting to OpenAI dash API. And if it was anything else, that didn't pop up. And I can put that in
Okay.
the chat too. Like
Yeah.
this is
It
what my
was
setting
there
looks like.
yesterday when I looked at this. I am on the daily build of Positron, I think, so it may be something updated between today. But we're going to use Anthropic models anyway, so it doesn't. But if you have access to another model that you could provide a key in that way, you can use Positron Assistant. Databot right now, we're saying only use Claude models. Um, okay, so we enabled this, showed you how to configure the language provider, and now we're basically ready to use these tools. I don't want to spend too much time on the setup just because there's a lot to cover, but please ask questions if this seems confusing. Okay,
Yeah, and you can come back to the Data Science Lab channel and ask that question as well. And we will help you or the Positron channel.
yeah,
Um, but also don't forget that you do need to install an extension
yes, for Databot.
for data.
So yeah, and if you have never installed extensions in Positron, there's this little extensions tab over here, and then you can search for extensions and install. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to actually use these tools. And for this part, we're going to use this data set, which in here is called charlatan hallucination cases.csv. So I guess this is uh, somewhat like meta, I guess. We're going to look at hallucination data, like LLM hallucination data in legal cases. So this is I think it's called the AI hallucination. What is this called? I don't remember what it's called exactly, but I can give you the link in a second. But it's a database of legal decisions in cases where there was a AI produced hallucination. So it's not like decisions on hallucination. It's like there was some kind of, lawsuit and a lawyer produced some document that had a hallucination in it, like a wrong citation, like a made up legal case, and then something happened in the case, like the lawyer was fined or given a warning. So there's actually a lot of these. Um, and we're going to use Databot to take a look at this. So again, you can access most things from the command palette. If you're not clicked into Zoom with Command Shift P, and then search for Databot and it will open. I already had something that was going on here earlier. Um, you can always start a new conversation with this plus button. Okay, so this is Databot. And again, this is specifically really for exploratory data analysis. So there's a lot of decisions that we made in building this that make it geared towards exploratory data analysis. And one is these like underlined blue suggestions. And these give you like ways to explore your data. And you'll see that after each turn, when Databot gives me some answers, it's going to typically provide more suggestions afterwards. And this can help you explore the data. Okay, a couple other things I just want to point out here. And is this big enough? Like, is the text big enough? Can you all see this well?
I think so, but everybody can chime in the chat and Discord. And we also had a question, which was,
Oh,
is there any way to configure reasoning efforts when signing in with GitHub Copilot? I'm not 100% sure what that means. Erin says she can
yes.
see the size is okay.
Okay, cool. So GitHub Copilot is just for the like code completions in Positron. And we're not going to use it for Databot or Positron Assistant.
Okay.
Um, I don't think there's, I don't know. Do you know, Simon, if there's any reasoning configuration?
I'm not aware. No.
Yeah.
I am not aware either. If anybody in the chat is, please go and answer that question or add some context. Um, and then David Diaz said, does Databot already support other providers beyond Claude? Yes, I think so. Wait.
Databot
No,
does not. Positron
Databot
Assistant
does.
does.
Yes,
It's
Positron Assistant does.
it's a little confusing. Right. One reason for this is that like all the models are different, and we want people to have a good experience when they're using these kind of tools. And so if we like make something like Databot and have tested it a lot with certain models or like geared the prompts to work with certain models, we can't just like slot in a new model without testing and iterating. And so like we're only really confident that Databot is going to do a good job with the Claude model. So I did want to point out that you can at this time. So I did want to point out that if you click on the model name, you can select a model. So if you want to change to Haiku, which is a cheaper model, or go up to Opus, which is a more expensive, more powerful, generally model, you can do that there. Um, great. Okay. So let's now explore the data. So I said we are going to look at the hallucination cases data. So there are a variety of ways we might open this conversation. I could just ask it to like, sorry, it keeps thinking I'm clicked into Zoom. Uh, Take a look at the hallucination data, and it'll look through the files and probably find it. But I did want to point out that you can also do this. You just ask it to load and then if you do you get a file picker, and then I can
Oh,
select the
nice.
exact file. Okay. And then hit enter, and it's going to do some things. So now we're getting a this little pop-up that is showing us what code it wants to run and asking us if we can allow it. I'm going to say allow for session so that I don't have to keep clicking this. Okay. And so this is like the core of what Databot does. You ask it a question, and it runs some code, and then it gives you a little summary, and then it gives you some suggestions. So it didn't do much this time because all I asked it to do was load the data, but now it has some suggestions of things we might want to look at. So let's just like get a summary of the data set. You can ask questions that are not in the suggestions, but you can also click on them.
Kieran mentioned how interesting it is that it defaulted to read.csv and not tidyversus read_CSV. Same, interesting.
Yeah.
If I was doing a code review, I would have been like, maybe use read_CSV.
Yeah. Okay, so it has run some code to explore the data. We're getting some output. It's giving us a summary of the data that now we can take a look at. And then it's giving us some suggestions at the end. So a couple things I just want to point out is that by default, you can see all of this code. There is a way to hide the code, but we generally want you to be able to easily see this. So it is possible to review it if you want to. And then the other thing is that we want Databot to not give you too much output at any one time. As soon as it starts doing just like tons and tons of code, it becomes very hard for you as the human to keep track of what's going on. And for this kind of tool, like we want the person to keep pace with Databot essentially. So you can keep track of what's happening in your data. And like one primary reason for this is that if you're doing exploratory data analysis, the point is for like you as the person to have an understanding of the data. If the LLM just has the understanding of the data, that doesn't really help you that much if you're doing EDA. You want to know what is going on in it. And so if it's just doing a bunch of code and then giving you tons and tons of output that you're not going to sift through, you're not going to actually do the like sense making process of looking through and understanding, what the patterns are in the data, if there's any problems, all of that. Okay.
Sweet. Okay. I'm going to take a quick pause and let Isabella ask some questions from the Discord.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, Sarah. Just wondered, what is the cases with monetary penalty in the console output? Do you know?
Oh, this is the code that it ran.
Mhm.
It used cat to like write out a bunch of text, which is one thing that it can do, I guess. So this is just like text that was the output technically of code that it ran. So all the code,
Yeah.
if we scroll up, we see more like eventually we'll see more like code looking stuff and not just the output of cat. So all this code is being run here. And so one other thing to point out is that Databot and Positron Assistant have access to your variables. I didn't really have anything loaded when I started up Databot, but if I did, I could just ask it to, like if I started a new session, I could say, look at hallucination cases. It won't need to do anything. It already has access to this data. But this also means that when it runs code, I now have access to this. So if I wanted to shift out of Databot and just look at hallucination cases, it's hallucination data. I guess I don't have. Did it not load tidyverse? Oh, because it ran it with read.csv. So that's one disadvantage of that. We can use the data and I could do things with it myself. Yeah.
I think we had one more.
Yeah. I think kind of related, it seems like it produces an output that it thinks like would work best for you. Do you happen to know like if the column names of the data set are very, very messy, does it kind of suggest that, or do you kind of have to prompt it if you want those kind of edits?
Yeah.
Like would it suggest janitor if they were messy or
Yeah. It might unprompted, but it definitely would if you asked it to clean it up. So I think some of these, we can take a look at it in the Data Explorer. These column names aren't great, so it didn't say anything about them, but if I ask it, we can do that. If I move the zoom window, we could ask it that. Column names aren't very good. Can you clean them up? Let's see what it does.
And then while it is working, Isabella asked in the chat, like, can you add skills to Databot? Like Claude skills?
Yes. And hopefully we will get there. Or
Okay,
you could do this
sweet.
now, I guess, but I
No,
have
no.
a planned skill.
Yeah.
Great.
And
We'll get there.
yeah, and if skills are new to folks, please correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding it's like a markdown file with kind of instructions of how you like things. So Kieran mentioned that it used the base read CSV,
Yeah.
but say like you wanted to use read underscore CSV from readr, you could like put in the skill, use tidyverse functions, and it would do that instead.
Yeah. So that would be a good thing for, we can just talk about this now. That would be a good thing for the databot.md file. So and one way to like create this file is by clicking the little elephant where it says memory. And so I don't think I have one already. There's nothing really in here that I want to save to the memory, but we could say like, yeah, always use read or reader, read CSV to read in CSVs.
Oh, that's so cool.
And this is going to create a databot.md file. And this is kind of like a set of instructions for Databot within this particular directory. This is sort of a specific instantiation of an agents.md file, which you might have seen or used for other other agents. Um, you could put things, yeah, like please always use read underscore CSV, always use, the native pipe, but also specifics about your data. So if there were things specific to this hallucination cases data that every time I looked at it, I definitely wanted Databot to know about, I could put that in the databot.md file. Like the example I was going to go into later with this data set, is that like there's a couple issues in the data that it is impossible to know unless you tell the model that there are those problems in the data. Um,
Mm.
and this is something that if you're analyzing the data with any kind of agent, you want it to always know. And so you can put it in the databot.md file or the agents.md file. And it'll load that at the start of every conversation. So here, like, I don't know, if there was some issue in the data, we could put, or we might even just put general documentation for this data set. This one is relatively straightforward in like my playing around with Databot with this. It does a pretty good job of understanding what's going on. But if it were more complicated or like these column names were inscrutable or something like that, you could put, a data dictionary, more information on what's going on, or like your goals for your analysis, other things like that in the
Oh, a
file.
data dictionary is a great idea. And there's also a question from Marlene, which is a fantastic question. I'm surprised that we haven't hit it by this like halfway mark already, which is like this code isn't being saved anywhere. So like where does it go? What are you
Yes.
what are you gonna do with it? I know that you
Yeah.
can and you're gonna get there, but it's
Yeah.
a
No, great
fantastic
question.
question.
Um, so the first thing is that, oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Uh, you can look back at previous conversations. So if you make a new conversation, I have a bunch open here, but you can go back and look at previous conversations that way. But you um, can also write the code to a report. We didn't do that much in this conversation, but it'll still put something in a report. Um, and I'll show you what happens when I run this. Just like, let's just say summarize findings. You can also just run this command by itself. And this is a slash command. So you just do slash report, summarize findings.
Is there a way to
And
know what
yeah,
all the slash commands are?
yes. If you type slash, they will come up.
Sweet.
So report makes Cordo document notebook is going to put it into a Jupyter notebook. Instead of clicking the elephant, we could have also done save memory, and then compact will compact the conversation. Okay, so it made a quarter report with our findings. So this is one way to save the code. It probably put like more information than we wanted in here. It also wrote a bunch of prose, but it did include at least some of the code that we wrote. If we had done more manipulations or exploration, we could have said like specifically, I want to include these pieces of the analysis. Please put them in the QMD file. It did remember that because I asked it to fix the name, so it did remember what it did there, and it put that in the setup chunk, which is nice. Um, yeah, cool. And now we could edit this how we wanted to. Any
Perfect.
questions about that?
I think that the only other question was from Anna that said, I would love for Databot to use the namespace operator, the double colon, to
Mm,
specify which packages or methods or
yeah,
functions things are coming from. And in the chat, we said that's something we would probably put in the databot.md file. Does that sound right?
yeah, that would be a good thing to put in there. Yeah, I forgot to. We didn't open it after we created this, so this is what it looks like. It actually put more in here than I thought it was going to. And let's see if it put, okay, it did put up at the top, always use read underscore CSV. So you could put, yeah,
Yay.
please namespace functions in there. And this might be something that like you generally have, like it might not be specific to your data. You might always have, a little bit of instructions that you always put into these kind of agent instruction files, like always use these kind of functions, always namespace, always use some internal package that it wouldn't necessarily know to use, that kind of thing.
Yeah. For me,
Okay.
it would be always use Skimmer because
Yeah,
that's what I do every single time.
cool. Yeah. Um, Okay, and yeah, I feel like I'm rushing a little bit. Sorry, but there's other things that I want to show you.
Yeah, let's go.
So uh, we can talk more about Databot in a bit, but I do want to just show you Positron Assistant really quickly.
I
So
would love
to
that.
open Positron Assistant, it's this little robot icon in the taskbar over here. And let's make this bigger. Um, Again, we have a model selection. Um, it shows us that what kind of session we have. And it's the same kind of thing, right? It's a chat inside of Positron. One thing that Positron Assistant is really useful for is debugging. So say like, let's say there was uh, an error here. Or like we misnamed this.
Like mistype the CSV name or something.
Yeah. So this should fail. Yeah. So it fails, and we could say like the QMD didn't render. Let's fix. Or something.
I like the brevity. Please fix.
uh, and oh, it thinks. Okay, so and it correctly identified the issue. So like Databot, it has access to kind of like all of the pieces of information that it's going to need to be helpful. It can see your variables, it can see the console, it can see your files. And yeah, I have so many things open right here. It's kind of hard to see. Let's close some of these. And it fixed the problem. And for Positron Assistant, it has this sort of interface where it shows you the suggested change and you can keep or undo it. So I'm going to keep this. And then I guess it found some other things it wanted to fix. And so we can say that we want to keep those. Okay, and so then it invites us to try rendering again. It still failed. Okay. There's some general issues in the code that we could continue to ask it to fix if we wanted to. Usually Databot does a better job of like just making a QMD file with code that works, but we didn't chat with it for very long. So it might not have known like what to put in here. But another thing that you can do with Positron Assistant, which one was the issue? Case name doesn't exist. So you can do I did Command I, and it'll open this little inline assistant thing. And let's see, actually, if we like did something like this, Command I, can you fix the problem? And it might have some suggestions for you. Yeah, it needs a equal sign. So this is another way that you could use Positron Assistant inside of Positron.
And that was Command I.
Command I, yeah, and it'll
Command
open
I or
this
Control
little
I. Okay, cool.
in file editor. Okay, just want to make sure I didn't
The only
miss
other thing that would be
anything.
great to stick in here is Luis's question, which was, is there a way to search within that Databot pane?
Is there a way to search? I don't think so.
Like a
There's
Control
not a way to
F or
search, right?
anything?
What happens if you do that?
Yeah, Control F.
Oh, I
There
guess
you
it's
go.
just Control F. Okay, that works.
Good to know. Thank you for
Good
asking, Luis.
question. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, again, one thing I want to point out is that like Databot specifically is geared towards you still having quite a bit of control. So it could have just like done a bunch of analysis behind the scenes and then plopped it all in that Quarto report. But instead, how Databot works is you sort of build up an understanding of the data alongside of it. you're keeping track of what's happening. You're seeing the code. You're like looking at these little summaries it gives you, and you're exploring the data together. And then you might put the results in a QMD file. So this was a conscious choice. Like we want the human to be keeping up with Databot and for you to be like iterating together. Um, and part of the reason is just so that like you can, assess whether or not the analysis is correct. But it's also because part of like, again, like I said, if you do EDA and at the end of it, you as the person have no idea what's going on in the data, like you didn't really do EDA and that probably wasn't that helpful for you. There are uses where you just need a, report output. But if your goal is to understand the data, you need a tool that is going to like, allow you to do that. And part of the way the Databot does this is by showing you, less output at each turn and then involving you with these suggestions and showing you the code. Okay. Cool. Let's see. I just want to, I'm trying to keep track of the time. Okay, let's quickly go to Posit Assistant, which is in RStudio. So I'm going to share
And
that.
this is like brand new. I've never seen this before.
Where is the share? One second.
Oh, it's okay. Zoom
I
does
found
strange
it.
things.
Okay.
Also, I think it was Nick had asked in the chat, like how to turn off the inline commands. And I shared editor.inline suggest.enabled equals false as a setting for settings.json. That will turn off your inline suggestions. I learned this from Jenny Bryan because I like really get disoriented by any inline suggestions at all. And then Isabella also shared a gist. Hopefully those help everybody. And I will put them, if you're watching this later, I'll put them in the description.
Okay. I don't know where our QMD file went, but I just want to really quickly show this. So this is Posit Assistant, and this is in RStudio. And currently it's under like it's in a private beta, so you can sign up for this. But if you just download RStudio without access, you won't have access to this. So this is a bit of a preview. But I just wanted to show this. This is essentially like Positron Assistant and Databot in one tool. So instead of having to switch back and forth depending on the kind of task that you're doing, it's all in this chat here. So you can do both exploratory analysis and more like coding focused tasks all in the same thing. So just want to I'll quickly show this. So we can do the same thing where we say like load the hallucination data. And it is using it. Posit Assistant will also obey the databot.md file, but you can also just call this agents.md. So notice that it used read underscore CSV like we asked. And this looks very similar to Databot, where we can use these suggestions to explore the data. But you can also do more like software engineering type tasks within Posit Assistant. So we might ask it, we haven't really done much with the data, so this might not work that well, but we could ask it to make a Shiny app that displays the data. And instead of giving us this output that looks like it's looking at the data, giving us the output, giving us suggestions, it's going to do something much more, or at least it should do something much more autonomous, where it is writing the code and just sort of going until it completes the task, which is what it's supposed to do.
Have you noticed any like time differences with like how quickly things run in RStudio versus in Positron? I feel like
Not
it's about the same.
really. It should be about the same because the models are the same. Now I'm using Sonnet 4.5. When I was in Positron, I was using
Oh,
Opus,
you were
but
using Opus. Yeah.
it wrote us an app. I
It
don't know where
did.
it
Where
is.
is the app dot?
I think I might be on like a weird branch or something. We could ask it. Can you just run the app? I don't think this is a Posit Assistant thing. I think
I like
it,
that you typoed, can you just the app? But it was smart enough to be like, I'm gonna run that app for you. I need this in my life because I frequently am gonna type the wrong thing.
it's so
Sarah, what
weird.
happens if
I,
you open that URL that it mentions at the
let's see.
bottom in your browser?
Yeah. Okay, here, I'll share this.
And Anna, you had asked, making sure you understand Posit Assistant and Positron Assistant are different. Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
I
Um,
know that those names being similar are confusing. The former is a combination of Positron Assistant and Databot. Databot, yes. So Posit Assistant is a combination of Positron Assistant and Databot in RStudio.
yes. Yeah. Yeah. And it is, you have to sign up for the private beta at this point to get access to it. Which is, I think, Libby, you shared the link at the start. So
Isabella
yeah,
did, yeah.
or Isabella. Yeah. Okay, so it did make, I'm not like gonna claim this is, the best app of all time. And if I'd given it more instructions, it probably would have done a better job. But it did just go off and successfully make a Shiny app that we can now continue to iterate on,
It
which
did
is
what we
pretty
asked.
cool. Yeah.
Just
Um,
display the data.
yep. Yeah. And I think like doing this kind of task is a good example of uh, a task that you generally are okay with an AI assistant doing more autonomously, um, versus something like exploratory data analysis, where you need to sort of be involved frequently so that you can understand your data. I'm okay with, like, if I know what I want to go into the Shiny app, I'm generally okay with Posit Assistant or something similar to just go and take what I know about the data and put it into a Shiny app relatively autonomously. Um, one reason is that, like, it is easy to verify for both computers and humans if the Shiny app is working. Um, so I can just look at this and see immediately if this is what I want, and then go back to the assistant if I want adjustments. And the LLM, or like the assistant itself, can also tell if the code is broken, and then fix it, like while it's running the app for the first time, or like if it produces an error and then I ask it to fix something. So it's generally easy to verify if it's working. Whereas something like a data analysis, where it's often harder to tell for the LLM or for you as the person quickly if it is done correctly. So you often need more human involvement. Okay.
There is, if okay, maybe we can show it in Databot. There is a question about like what is the typical token burn rate? Is there a way to check how many tokens you've used in a particular
Yes.
session?
And Renato had shared in the chat as well that a quick test yesterday with just basic output was, a certain number of tokens and it was about 6 cents, which I think is a good little interesting data point. Thank you for sharing, Renato.
Yeah. I know how do you see, do you remember how to see the token usage in Databot? I know how to do it in Posit Assistant, Simon. There is a
Yeah, I'm
way.
wondering if it's like only shown inside of Posit Assistant or something. I'm surprised not to see it.
Yeah. I think there's a way, but I have,
I remember it being in like the bottom right.
God,
Not a slash command.
no. I You can in Posit Assistant. I don't want to like reshare because it takes a couple minutes, but there's a little bar, there's a little like token counter bar in the bottom right-hand corner of Posit Assistant that shows you how many tokens you've used, and then you can click on it for more information.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure there what is it or was a way to see it in Databot, but I can get back to you all. Um, okay. Um, Let me see. I know we're kind of short on time.
We have 10 more minutes.
Yes. Let me try to
And don't worry about time.
pare things down.
We're all about asking questions and figuring stuff out, so it's wonderful that we've been able to do that.
Okay. Well, the three things that I wanted to cover is first, I just want to talk a little bit more about like what kinds of tasks that you might want to do with AI and what kind of things you might not want to. And then someone had asked about a skill, so we can show that. And then Simon or I will show the reviewer tool. So I think we can probably do that in 10 minutes.
Let's do it.
So, okay, it's okay to share. Just quickly, I just want to say, like, we talked a little bit about verification of task completion or task correctness. So I'd say like generally, if you are working on some kind of analysis, one thing that you might want to ask yourself is like, can you verify it? Or like, how will you know if it is correct? If you're doing something with AI and you have no clear answer for how you would tell if it's correct or not, you might want to be wary of using it. So an example is like uh, like a analysis where you don't understand if the code is or if the data is correct or not. And you're asking the LLM to like tell you if the data is correct. It's not going to know that because it does unless it has access to tons and tons of context. Um, and so you might want to be wary or just like use something with more human involvement. And then a couple other things you might want to ask yourself is also like, how much does this thing matter? If it is very important and hard to verify, you might not want to use AI or be wary or cautious, or go over the results carefully. And then the final thing is like, are current LLMs good at this type of task? Generally, they are very good at pure coding tasks for most purposes. But they are worse at something. So like if you are doing some kind of task, you should have a general sense of if LLMs are good at that or not. And they are really good at some things and less good at others. And so it's not sort of a blanket, like they are bad at all of data science or they are good at all of data science. They are good at, sort of different types of tasks, or different areas. Okay. Cool. And so because of that, one thing that is important are either providing guardrails for the assistant or for adding additional information through customization. So we already saw one way that you can do that by creating this MD file for the agent with more information. So you can use this to give Databot, give Posit Assistant way more information about your data than it would otherwise have, which can help prevent it from like, hallucinating column names that don't exist or using a column that you don't want it to use. You might have data where there's two columns that kind of do the same thing. You only want it to use one. This kind of information could go in the databot.md file and could save you from creating an analysis that is incorrect. The other thing is that if it's possible to add like determinism in this sort of largely non-deterministic process, that can be really helpful. And one way to do that is through a skill. So we only have 5 minutes, but you can add skills for Databot and for Posit Assistant. And hopefully there is a skill creator skill. So this is a skill that helps you create other skills. So the example I was gonna use the other data for, but let's see if it'll work here. So let's see, like use and you just need to kind of mention the skill name or like allude to it for it to know that it should do that. Create a skill that creates
This is so meta.
a specific type of table. So we were going to make a table and then like create a skill for that, but this should work. So notice that it has this little output thing that says skill, create skill. So it is using the create skill to make a skill. And it has some questions for me. We'll see if it does. Okay, no, it needs more information. I just wanted to make it. We didn't give it enough information. Okay, so now it thinks it has enough information. If you were really doing this, you would probably want to be much clearer with it about what you wanted it to do. But I just wanted it to start the process so I can show you where they go. It's going to put this in .posit AI/skills. And after it works for a little bit, it's going to come up with a markdown file that specifies this skill. It's going to be like a bit of code and some information about it. And then in the future, when I want to create this type of table, I just reference it by name and it'll always use that information to make the table. So this is really helpful if you want, like if you always make a certain type of formatted table or you have to for some reason, put that in a skill so you don't have to provide it with that context every time that you talk to it. Did that make sense? I know that was very brief. The important thing to remember is that there's a skill creator skill that can help you.
I love it. Very
Okay.
meta.
Okay. So now, did you want to share your screen for review, or do you want me to just keep going since I'm here, Simon?
Yeah, I'd say keep at it.
Okay. Um, so this last example that I want to show you, this is a package. Let's close these. This is a package called Reviewer. And what this does is help you review code from like a tidy perspective, or like a good R code perspective. And so Simon made this package. One reason I wanted to show it is that it's cool and useful, but also it's a good example of something where you as the human have more control over how you are using the LLM suggestions, than if you are using an agent that just goes and works very autonomously. So let's see how this works. This is a sample script that has some issues in it. And if we do reviewer, review, and then we pass it the file path to the script, it should open, but you can't see it. 1 second.
It's okay. Switch. Elevator music.
Yeah. Here we go. It gave it some time to think anyway. And it gives you suggestions in the side for things that would be like bad for reproducibility, just bad code style, sort of tidy conventions. And then you can either accept or reject them. So like this script had used setwd, it didn't like that. It mixed different types of pipes. And then it's only going to look at sort of chunks of the script at a time, and then it will give you more suggestions that you can accept or reject. So this is nice, like if you want to sort of learn various conventions, you might use this, because you kind of have to read the suggestion before accepting it versus like the LLM just going off and making a bunch of edits for you, and that like you never saw the process.
This
Cool.
is very cool. So the reviewer package, and is this on CRAN and working in both Positron and RStudio?
So do you want to talk about it?
We have
Sure.
1 minute left.
Yeah, yeah. So the current status on this project, I just put like a few hours into it and ended up feeling pretty unsure about how useful this idea was. And so since then I haven't put much more time into the idea. But if people feel like this is an interface that they would find useful, I would definitely be into the idea of trying to fix a bunch of bugs and push this further and send a CRAN as well. So do let me know if you think this is an idea that you're interested in.
Fantastic. I think that this is really interesting. If you want to go look at Reviewer and test it, I think this would be a really interesting thing if teachers could put their preferences inside of it to like replicate so students could get like a pseudo review from their professor. I think that'd be super cool. All right, well, we have reached the top of the hour. We have lots of interest about Reviewer in the chat, though. Thank you so much, Sara and Simon, for coming and hanging out with us. All right, everybody. Goodbye. We'll see you
Great.
next week.
Thanks.